It's no secret that the myths, legends, and folktales of Ireland are rife with mischievous and occasionally murderous monsters.
Banshees, wolf walkers, pukas, the Dullahan, Auertach, the vampire. And while these creatures of the night are all terrifying in their own right, I can't help but notice that they're all also roughly human-sized, or wolf-sized, if not smaller. Yes, I think it's safe to say that Ireland's rogues gallery is dominated, at least in the popular imagination, by diminutive ne'er-do-wells. But there is bigger fare to be found, if one knows where to look. Hint, at the bottom of lakes. More on that soon. And no, I'm not talking about Irish giants, who, despite their size, tend to behave like normal humans. No, what I'm on the proverbial hunt for are real, honest-to-goodness Irish dragons. 1. The Oilliphéist. Perhaps the closest thing Irish mythology has to a proper dragon, as viewed through a Western lens, the Oilliphéist gets its name from the Irish Oll, meaning greatness or vastness, and Peist, meaning fabulous beast, monster, reptile, or worm, though in some texts, Peist is translated directly as dragon. It turns out the Ulster cycle or Red Branch cycle of Irish mythology suffers no lack of Peists. In the Tán Bó Freac, Cattle Raid of Freac, a story that dates back to at least the 8th century CE, the warrior Freac is forced to battle a Peist after Aillén and Maeve, the king and queen of Connacht, trick him into swimming in a monster-infested lake. Freac gets his hands on a sword and slays the Peist, but is severely wounded in the process. Fortunately, hundreds of fairy women show up and carry him to the other world to heal him. Freac then makes a triumphant return to Aillén's palace at Cruachan. Fun fact, some scholars believe this story, the Tán Bó Freac, was the main inspiration for the English Beowulf saga. But I digress. Another Peist, or rather a trio of Peists, can be found in the story of Connetta, which also goes by the title The Golden Apples of Loch Earn. The story tells of a prince, Connetta, who, at the behest of a talking horse, follows a magical ball thingy into a lake where he encounters 3 hissing serpents guarding a causeway, and to get past them he has to throw pieces of meat into their mouths. Yeah, this story is kind of bonkers. But what about the big dragons, the Oilliphéists? Perhaps the most famous Oilliphéist is Caranach. According to Celtic Studies professor James McKillop's A Dictionary of Celtic Mythology, Caranach, a.k.a. Coel, was the monster banished to Loch Derg in County Donegal by St. Patrick. Perceived as female, she was said to be the mother of demons or devils. Interestingly, there is a second Oilliphéist associated with St. Patrick. In a, quote, late legend, according to historian Peter Beresford Ellis, an Oilliphéist learns of St. Patrick's plan to eradicate Ireland's serpents and preemptively hightails it to the Atlantic. To quote Ellis, the Oilliphéist fled toward the sea, cutting its way through the land, forming the River Shannon. On its way, it swallowed a piper named O'Rourke, who continued to play his pipes to the beast's discomfiture so that it finally threw him back to land. 2. The Cata. Just when you thought it was safe to go into the River Shannon, a new monster appears. The Cata. The Cata has been described as Ireland's own Loch Ness monster. According to legend, it dwells in the River Shannon, Ireland's longest river, and sightings of the aquatic cryptid have been reported as recently as the 1960s. Apparently, the Cata's favorite bathing spot is Loch Ree, one of the 3 major lakes along the River Shannon. And while it may be tempting to draw a link between this Shannon-dwelling creature and the aforementioned Oilliphéist that carved out the River Shannon, descriptions of the Cata reveal a tiger of a different stripe. First described in the 15th century Book of Lismore, the Cata is known for, quote, having a horse-like head with a mane, gleaming eyes, thick claws with nails of iron, and a whale's tail, end quote, according to author M.G. Boutet's book, Celtic Astrology from the Druids to the Middle Ages. Boutet also notes that the name Cata is derived from the root word Cata with 2 T's, meaning pugnacious. Of course, another possibility is that the creature's name is Cata because it's a big old cat. The Irish word for cat is, wait for it, cat. And as Ellis explains, monster cats in Irish mythology are not without precedent. Quote, cats permeate the myths. For example, Urusan of Noth, who would often make off with people, and 3 monstrous cats dwelt in the cave of Cruachan, the entrance to the otherworld. This feline interpretation of the Cata is recorded in the life of Saint Senan, the hagiography of a 6th century County Clare-born bishop who established an abbey on Inishcathay, Scattery Island, in the Shannon estuary. As the story goes, Saint Senan's smith, Narach, is devoured by a large cat called the Foracat, but the saint rescues him from the monster's jaws and then chains the monster to the bottom of Duloc Lake near Mount Callan. However, in another version of the story, the one that evidently became more popular as the years went on, the cat monster is swapped out for a creature more closely resembling a Peist. Indeed, in Thomas Johnson Westrop's A Folklore Survey of County Clare, the Cata is referred to as, quote, the first in importance amongst the Peists. The action beats in this version of the story remain largely the same. The Cata swallows Saint Senan's smith, Senan rescues him, they chain the monster in banish it to Dulach, the Black Lake, at the base of Mount Callan. In between, however, we find this description of the Cata as it attacked. Quote, its eyes flashing flame with fiery breath, spitting venom and opening its horrible jaws. Source, Prose Life of St. Soninus. Now, that's definitely a dragon. Then again, the flashing eyes and open jaws do make it sound a bit like a hissing monster cat. And remember that other big Irish cat, the one Ellis mentioned, Irisan of Noth? Well, according to legend, Irisan snatches up a famed poet by the name of Senchan, a name similar to Senin, perhaps suspiciously so. What's more, in the Arusan lore, as in Cata lore, a 6th century Irish saint, this time St. Kieran, saves the day, rescuing a victim from the jaws of the beast. But we're not done yet, because there is another parallel Irish monster we can hold up against Cata and Urisan, the Broch Shi, or fairy badger, which, according to legend, was defeated and chained up by yet another 6th century Irish saint, St. Mac Cree. The location this time, County Clare's Loch Raha, Rah Lake. The implication here isn't that one of these stories is definitively the original and the others copied it, although that's certainly plausible. Instead, the bigger takeaway is that there is clearly a formula to these stories, an underlying blueprint, what Scottish folklorist J.F. Campbell calls the Celtic dragon myth. The names and places and monsters may change, but the formula dictates certain events and character moments must happen. 3. The Muirdris, a.k.a. Sinach. Call it a water monster, call it a sea monster, call it a sea dragon, call it a vast dragon serpent, to quote Martin Arnold's book Dragon, Fear, and Power. And hey, if you're going to call the Muirdris a vast dragon serpent, you might as well call it an Oilliphéist. To the best of my knowledge, the Muirdris, later known as the Sinach, first appears in the 16th century text The Adventure of Fergus MacLeody. The text follows a mythical king of Ulster who, with the help of some magical shoes provided by a fairy king, naturally, explores the depths of Dundrum Bay, aka Loch Rory in County Down. Upon viewing the monstrous Muirdris for the first time during one of his magical scuba sessions, Fergus's face is left disfigured by the creature's Dweedark, or death gaze. The semi-aquatic king surfaces with his life and with the knowledge that there's only one way to cure his disfigurement. He must return with his sword and magic fairy shoes and slay the Muirdris. Now, in later iterations of the story, Muirdris starts going by a new name, Sinach, which according to MacKillop means stormy. Ellis, however, argues that Sinach means having teats or paps, thus implying that the monster in question is not some vast reptile, but a mammal. Which is interesting because it's possible that the Muirdris/Sinach has an equine connection and is perhaps more closely related to the Scottish Kelpie, a shape-shifting water spirit that appears on land as a horse, than to your classic scaly, fire-breathing dragon. Indeed, author T.W. Rolliston describes the Muirdris as a, quote, river horse in his 1911 work, Myths and Legends of the Celtic Race. In this version, the Muirdris/Sinach isn't a Peist at all. Instead, the monster resembles the Agushka, or water horse, a creature that appears both in Irish and Scottish storytelling traditions. Unlike its cousin the Kelpie, the Agushka is more than just mischievous. It is a murderous, carnivorous opportunist who lures children onto its back by taking the form of a cute little pony. Upon reaching the water's edge, the Agushka's skin becomes sticky, and the monster drags its helpless victims down into the cold, silent depths. 4. Ellén Trechend. Finally, a three-headed dragon. You really can't make a list of dragons without including at least one King Ghidorah-esque three-headed dragon. It's sort of an unwritten rule. And when you do a Google image search for Ellén Trechend, what comes up? Bingo. Beautiful paintings and other illustrations of a scaly, snarling, building-sized monster with massive leathery wings and 3 serpentine heads. Ellis defines Ellén Trechend simply yet unambiguously as, quote, a three-headed monster which came out of the cave of Cruachan, end quote. But other academics specify that Ellén Trechend is not some three-headed Oilliphéist, but more like a giant three-headed bird monster. For example, Celtic scholar Whitley Stokes described Ellén Trechend as a, quote, monstrous triple-headed bird, end quote. Stokes also suggested that the name Ellén was derived from the old Irish word for bird, ein. FYI, the Trechend part of the name literally means three-headed, compared with the modern Irish Tríchean. Writing more than a century later, author Dara Smith offers the following etymology in his book Earthing the Myths, Legends, and Early History of Ireland. Quote, Ely in Irish means a charm or a chant or an incantation, and the goddess associated with the Ely may be the Ellén Trechend, or the triple-headed goddess who sometimes assumes the form of a destructive bird, end quote. Indeed, in almost all modern descriptions, Ellén Trechend has avian, not reptilian characteristics. So, case closed on this one, right? Ellén Trechend is a massive three-headed monster, only its appearance is probably a bit different from what you had originally pictured. Fewer scales, more feathers, fewer teeth, more beaks, but hey, the wings things are constant. Clearly, they were able to carry over as the popular image of Ellén Trechend evolved. The only issue with the giant bird monster interpretation of Ellén Trechend, it clashes with the story in which Ellén Trechend is introduced, the Battle of Mag Macruma. In the translation I looked at, the monster and its slayer, warrior poet Amergan Mech Esset of the Ulaid Overkingdom, not to be confused with the Milesian druid Amergan, are mentioned only in passing. And I quote, "Now Mac Macrima was so called from magic pigs that had come out of the cave of Cruachan. That is Ireland's gate to hell. Out of it too came the swarm of three-headed creatures that laid Ireland waste until Amergan, father of Conall Carneck, fighting alone, destroyed it in the presence of all the Ulaid. Out of it also had come the saffron-colored bird flock, and they withered up everything in Ireland that their breath touched until the Ulaid killed them with their slings." Whoa, this Ellén Trechend is an entirely different beast, literally. Instead of a single monster with three heads, the text presents us with, quote, "a swarm of three-headed creatures." What's more, this battle between Amergan and the swarm is immediately followed by a story about a flock of saffron-colored birds that withered up everything in Ireland that their breath touched. So now we've got a flock of fire-breathing birds and a swarm of presumably bird-sized three-headed monsters. It's easy to see how over time storytellers might end up combining these two supernatural forces into a single cohesive enemy, either intentionally or unintentionally. Speaking of which, 5. Aillén Mech Midhna. Even with the generous editorial approach I've taken while constructing this list, I struggle to call Aillén Mech Midhna a dragon. The otherworld monster nicknamed the Burner notoriously burned down the royal seat of Tara every Samhain, that is until the Finian cycle hero Finn McCool slewed him with a magical spear. I give a more detailed description of that fight in my video on famous weapons from Irish mythology, FYI. Moving on. Apart from the fire breath, there's really nothing draconic about Aillén Mech Midhna. Yes, if illustrations are to be believed, he's huge, a giant, but he's basically humanoid in design. Basically. In the 1914 book Heroes of the Dawn, author Violet Russell describes Aillén as an unconquerable enchanter and a magician. He's more man than monster. But we have to remember, Aillén did climb out of the cave of Cruach, just like so many monsters before him. Yes, it's called the Cave of Cruach in the Finian cycle of Irish mythology, whereas in the chronologically earlier Ulster cycle tales, it's called the Cave of Cruachan. But I think it's safe to say that they're the same cave. And according to the Irish linguist T.F. O'Reilly, it's also safe to assume that the aforementioned Ellén Trechend is effectively the same monster as Aillén Mech Midhna, hence the similarities in their names and incendiary capabilities. It's possible Aillén Mech Midhna represents the latest stage in the evolution of Aillén, its final form, more intelligent, more human. And once again, we see a storytelling formula at work. You can swap out the monster Aillén Trechend for Aillén Mech Midhna, and or the hero Amergan for Finn at your leisure, and the overarching narrative will remain the same. In fact, in one version of the story, that's exactly what happens. To quote Ellis, in one of the several variants of the Aillén Mech Midhna story, Amergan is given as the slayer of the beast, end quote. And while Aillén would go on to become one of the most infamous otherworld creatures, he would by no means be the last monster to crawl out of the cave of Cruachan. In addition to three-headed monsters and a trio of giant cats, the cave is also home to another supernatural triad, the three daughters of Eretek, Ireland's first werewolves. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment, and basically just tap all of the shiny buttons, and by the end of it, make sure you are subscribed to the Irish Myths channel. That really helps. And if you want to learn about the darker side of Irish mythology, check out my book, Irish Monsters in Your Pocket. My name is I.e. Neverday, editor of the short story collection Neon Druid, and creator of IrishMyths.com. Thanks for coming out.